Hey guys, Nathan at Duck River Honey. I'm here in the honey house getting some bottling done this morning before starting my day job. And I wanted to take a minute to go over my bottling tank and bottling and capping and labeling and all this because I've been doing this 3 years now, and I've put a lot of thought into how to be efficient in this because I'm getting bigger every year and I want to spend less time, less labor on each bottle without investing a ton of money into professional bottling and labeling equipment. So what I've come up with I think works pretty well. I'll sort of walk you through my process here and my thoughts behind it. I've got a Maxent 42 gallon bottling tank that'll hold right at 500 pounds of honey. Eight 5-gallon buckets will fill it up. And I'm bottling out of a Maxent no drip valve. And this tank is sitting on a Harbor Freight 1,000-pound lift cart. So I can wheel this cart around. Most importantly, I can drop it all the way to the ground, and that lowers the height of the tank for me to refill it with buckets that I'm lifting myself. It's a lot easier to lift a 60-pound bucket up to waist height than it is up to head height, and do that repeatedly. And you don't want to drop a bucket in the tank. That's not a good thing. You don't want to do that. So this lift cart works pretty well. You can see the Maxent 42 gallon overhangs a little bit on the front and the back, but the feet do not. The feet actually fit on this cart pretty well, and it's been stable for me. I don't move the tank around with the lift table up, and I keep it in the down position so there's no pressure on the hydraulic cylinder. So I'll sort of walk you through my process and some of the modifications I've made and the reasons why. The biggest thing is I put a stainless L-type ball valve on the outlet to the tank. And this is a 3-way valve. So what it is an L-type is like that. It forms a 90 degrees. So you turn it and it turns the direction of the flow. So right now I've got the lever in this position, and that is allowing honey to come out of the tank and then diverts it to the right, which sends it to this no drip valve, and then I can fill. If I turn the lever all the way this direction, it sends honey to the left, where I've got an adapter that takes it up to a 1.5 inch, and then I've got a 1.5 inch cam and groove fitting here with a dust cap. And what this will allow me to do is I can empty this tank back into buckets or into a drum, or at some point in the future I could use a flexible PVC to hook it up to a bottling machine like a Dadant Fill Master, something along those lines. Or if you just want to clean the tank out, you can hook it up to this and shoot hot water in the top of it and then take it to a drain, and it's a whole lot easier than only having this no drip valve on there. That's how I think most people bottle out of these, is they've just got that no drip valve on. And the problem, that's not a problem, but it can lead to some issues. The biggest one being honey will crystallize in this over time, and then the stem won't seat fully, or it gets kind of gummy. And if this is all it's holding back 500 pounds of honey in that tank, you can't service it. I mean, you can't take it out and run hot water through it. You can't take it out and lubricate it or take it apart or anything. So I like having a backup, 2 cutoffs in the flow. So I shut this one off and I can take this out, and I've got maybe a few ounces of honey in this whole system that I'm going to lose. It's not that big of a deal. This is also lockable, so I can put a padlock on this. I've got a 7 and a 3-year-old, so if I shut that off and put a padlock on it, I don't have to worry about the kids or anybody else messing around and having an accident. 500 pounds of honey in a tank going out on the floor would not be a good thing. So you can see my process here. You can see that I made this little shelf just out of angle iron and bolted it to this lift table. And this gives me just enough height that I can bottle my tallest bottle on top of a scale. So I just tear the bottle weight out and then fill, and I can make sure that I don't underfill. There we go. 0.05 ounces overweight. It's okay if you overfill bottles from a legal perspective, but underfilling is a no-no. Overfilling is a no-no from a efficiency standpoint. If you're giving away a half ounce of free honey on every bottle, that's a problem. That's one reason that on a bigger operation, a bottling machine would pay for itself pretty quickly, because honey's valuable. You know, I've done a little bit of manufacturing in the past, and I've come to realize that minimizing handling is how you get efficient. And I've put a lot of thought into this. I've got this rolling cart here. I actually put a big lid, honey bottle lid, under one of the wheels to kind of lock it down so it doesn't move around very much. But you'll notice that I'm touching this bottle one time and I'm doing everything to it that needs to be done in order to sell it. So I just filled it. I've got my caps here in a gasketed storage tote so they stay clean. I built this shelf right here that is adjustable. Now this works sort of like a hitch haul on a truck. Slides in and out, and then it is actually, I can tilt that too. I've got a label dispenser here. Pull my label off, and I've got this adjusted so that the bottle is square to my face, so it helps me to index and get these labels on as straight as I can by hand. Labeling is probably the weak link in this system right now. The speed is not bad, but the accuracy of me doing this by eye is not that good. The problem that I have is I'm using square bottles. There are some very affordable labeling machines like an Easy Labeler, a Sweeney manual labeler that you can use on round bottles. Round bottles are pretty easy. You know, people do homebrew wine and beer, and there's just a lot of manual machines to put labels on round bottles. There's not many that will do square bottles. I found one made by Race Label, and I may invest in one of those in the future, but it's expensive. It's not a $300 or $400 thing. It's expensive. And beyond that machine, the next one that I really want to go to is probably a universal labeler, pneumatic machine. They can set it up to do my style labels, but it would be $8,000 or $10,000 for that, and I'm just not at that scale and don't know that I'll ever get there. So I'm leaving this tank at about 92 to 95 degrees, and that gives me good speed on filling bottles until the tank gets low, because a full tank has more pressure down here and it just forces the honey out faster. The hotter you get the tank, the faster you can bottle, but also the faster the enzymes in the honey are going to degrade, and the faster the color of the honey is going to degrade. So I don't like storing honey in here long term, keeping it warm, because it will degrade the honey quality. I would prefer to turn it off and store it cold, and then just turn it on in a few hours before I needed to do some bottling. But so far this year I've been running through this fast enough that I've been leaving it on and haven't had a problem yet. But things slow down, especially if I've still got honey after Christmas. and things slow down some, then I'll probably turn it off until I need it. So I'll walk you through the hardware that I've got here. This is a 1-inch NPT outlet, so I've got a close 1-inch NPT nipple here. And on this, you need to put a lot of pipe dope or Teflon tape on it, because I've got to get this in the horizontal position and you want it to be firm. That's a real issue that I've found. I've had to take it off there once and put more tape on it, because it'll actually turn a whole nother half a turn, and I don't want it to do that. I want it to be horizontal here. So I'll probably have to take it off again and rework that, try to tighten it up some. NPT, you can't really put a lock nut on that or anything because it's a tapered thread. That's the only real problem I've had with this. But again, right now honey's coming from the outlet and going this direction. I had to put, I believe this is a 4.5-inch stainless nipple, because I need handle clearance. The handle will actually hit the no drip valve. So I had to have a 4.5-inch, I think a 4-inch would work. And then I've got a coupler, and then I screwed my no drip valve into that. Over here I've got another close fitting. I've got a 1-inch NPT to 1.5-inch adapter. And then I screwed in my cam and groove fitting, and I've got a dust cap there. Another tip I've got for you is, this is the drain plug for the water jacket on this tank. And the first time I filled this tank up was in my house, and I used it for my first year's production, which was not much. And then I had to drain the tank out to be able to move it out of the house because it was so heavy. Well, there's 12 gallons of water in this tank. And when you take that plug out, 12 gallons of water comes rushing out. So I had to have 3 5-gallon buckets and try to swap them while it was running out. It just made a huge mess. So that didn't last long. I put this boiler drain in, and I forget what thread this is. It may be a 1/2 inch, but I just took the plug to the hardware store and matched it up. So I've got this boiler drain that goes to a garden hose thread, and I've actually got a garden hose cap on there just as an extra backup in case anything ever leaked. And what this allows me to do, and actually 2 things, you wouldn't think that, but what I can do is, if the tank's already empty, I can hook a garden hose up to this, open that valve, and then fill the tank up with a garden hose just by pressure, using pressure to push water in there. The second thing you can do is you can hook a garden hose to this and run it to a drain or outside to actually drain the tank. So the reason that you might want to drain this tank is if you're out of honey for the year and it's in an unheated space, you don't really want the water in the jacket to freeze. So I like to drain it if I'm done using it, and that just kind of puts it into deep storage. So that boiler drain is a useful thing. I think it ought to come like that, but it's not an expensive add, and it's a whole lot easier to just go ahead and put that on before you fill this thing up the first time. So here's another tip on bottling tanks, and this is specific to people who are using buckets to refill their tanks. This would not apply if you're, pumping out of a drum or have a pump and a clarifier sump or whatever. But if you're using buckets to refill your tank, and I don't know if other manufacturers do this, but Maxent makes these pail perches, and on this 42-gallon tank, 4 of these will fit. And I would recommend having as many on here as you can possibly get, because that means you've got less lifts to get your tank refilled. With 60-pound honey buckets, I can dump 240 pounds in at a time. And I've got this bucket scraper. You can pick these up at Lowe's or Home Depot. And they do work, but they're messy. You always end up with honey on your arm or hand. And it's a whole lot easier just to let these buckets drain for hours or even overnight, and you'll come back and they'll be pretty clean. Then you can wash them out easier. It's just a whole lot easier to do that. So if you're using that passive draining method to refill your tank with these 4 pail perches, I can refill this tank in 2 lifts. basically. The only other modification I've got is my son drew me a flower in a pot, and his initials are on the leaves, and there is a bee circling the flower. So he drew that while we were in here one day filling bottles, and I had to put that on the bottling tank so I get to look at it while I fill. Guys, I hope that this is helpful. Like I said, I've put quite a bit of thought into eliminating touches on bottles and trying to get as much done every time you pick something up as you can. That's where speed comes from. That's where your labor efficiency comes from. And you know, I'm not lazy. I'm not afraid of work, but if you can get more work done in the same amount of time, that's efficiency, and that's what I'm really shooting for. I'm trying to handle as much production as I can with the available time that I've got, and you have to get more efficient to be able to do that and still grow. I appreciate you watching. See you on the next one.